Since the 1990s, Japan has been in a recession. They had never left a recession. They have been in a constant attempt to prop up the stock market, keep the economy moving faster than the debt, and try to desperately export their goods. As the years have moved on, nations have grown, yet Japan has sunk. With a zombie banking system, the government has been carrying around a dead weight for such a long time. Despite the foolish talking point that Japan is the best example of how printing money works, I believe that Japan is the perfect example of the failure of QE. You came here for the truth, so let me unveil that for you. Today we will talk about Japan increasing the amount of QE yet again and decreasing the interest rates. This happens to be a broken record. We are seeing nations all around the world engaging in this, and Japan is no different. Let's begin with this article out of Reuters. Driving interest rates below zero, the Bank of Japan has turned to a comatose government bond market into an enormous free-for-all, complicating the central bank's own efforts to kickstart growth and end deflation. Their own policies are failing them. But of course, if they didn't see that coming, I really don't know what to say, because these are failed policies right from the get-go. The $9 trillion market for Japanese government bonds has been all but paralyzed since the BOJ began a massive monetary easing 3 years ago that made the bank the dominant buyer. When you set up a system that engages in more and more debt, the central bank basically has to buy it all and put it into a big pile in hopes that somebody will be able to buy it up at a later date. But the fact is that in this case here, Japan and the BOJ have basically been accumulating a lot of debt. The BOJ buys it, and it's been sitting there. And they've been buying every last piece of this debt. They've been doing the same thing with the stock market. These are public facts. It's not a conspiracy to know that central banks are buying up the debt. That's why they can continue the system. You know, there's an old thought that would say that, China is buying up the debt of the US, but in fact, central banks are buying up their own debt, and central banks buy up other countries' debt. And they do this and they consider it an asset, but it's a failed policy. In the 2 months since the BOJ announces imposing negative interest rates, the government bonds have become more a volatile commodity, with prices swinging wildly as below zero yields confound investors' attempts to find fair market value. That's exactly what Ben Bernanke had said, and I believe Alan Greenspan had said, that you can't bring the interest rates down without distorting the markets. There's really a finite amount of how low it can go with it having any positive effect. And they're nowhere near that anymore, because once they get too low, you get rid of that. You don't have to go into the negative. The government bonds market is really in a bubble when you think about it as an investment vehicle. Their prices have moved away from the fundamentals. People don't have a traditional way of measuring it. Well, this is the way that it's been going. I've been talking about this, but of course many will suggest that's not true, but this is a perfect example. Let's use Japan. Let's turn it around on them. You can read countless books supporting the Keynesian theory using Japan as their model. But this is a perfect example of why it doesn't work. All right, let's look at this. It's an article that I want to get to 3 separate issues from it. Higher salaries encourage consumption and are all vital in raising inflation. This in turn would help erode some of the part of Japan's record 250% of their GDP debt pile. So that's right. Part of the issue why they do this, why they go into negative interest rates, why they print money, is to try to erode their own debt. This is a policy that is absolutely dangerous, but they all engage in it. Every single one, whether that's China or the US or Japan, they're all engaging in these same policies. Abe's calls have been echoed by some of the world's most renowned economists. That's right, some of them from the IMF, and a former Bank of England policymaker call for an unprecedented 10% increase in nominal wages in 2016. What is needed is a jumpstart to wage price spiral of the sort feared from the 1970s. That's right. What you need to do is intervene even more into the markets, and that will be the saving grace. Increase nominal wages. Don't fix the problem. Increase nominal wages, and that's coming from the IMF and the former Bank of England individuals here that, they're alumni from these organizations, so people take them seriously, but, intervening was the problem in the first place, and here they are yet again wanting to engage in the same behavior. A busted flush. In recent months, Abenomics' Fed arrow of the central bank stimulus has been accused of overshooting to such an extent that it is now actively hindering wage growth and denting business confidence. It did that a long time ago. So let's just say, for example, if today is the last day of a bear market and the market just grows from here on out for the next 10 years, they won't talk about these same failures, despite the fact that they are failures and are actual in the real economy, have failed. They're going to say that everything is working, but they've already failed. This is such a perfect example. I can't believe people write textbooks and books using it as an example of their success. Specifically, the Bank of Japan's landmark decision to enter negative interest rate territory has ushered in a new wave of panic rather than comfort over the power of central banks to stimulate moribund economies. It's not just about printing money. There are real things that need to come up. You can't have an economy be boosted simply by increasing, this is so silly, increase the amount of money that's being printed and you create prosperity and jobs. It doesn't make any sense, but of course that's not the policy in the first place. That's just what they try and do to make more money for themselves. Negative interest rates have sparked global concerns over the profitability of commercial banks and have led to stock prices falling across the developed world. Printing money does not increase prosperity. I think that's pretty obvious. Let's look at this further down in the article out of the Telegraph. It's not just about achieving 2% inflation target. The deeper issue has always been that government debt has been consistently growing faster than the economy for years. And that goes for so many countries. But what is the solution? Of course, print money. But this has been going on for quite some time. Look at it at every example. Look at it around the world. Printing money does not resolve your issue. But what are the actions? Print money, decrease interest rates. When you increase interest rates, do so at the very, very smallest amount that it doesn't make a difference whatsoever. That's the policies that we have been seeing right now for years. How a bank works. This is from my book. And I just want to read this quote from Milton Friedman. Any system which gives so much power and so much discretion to a few men so that mistakes, excusable or not, can have such far-reaching effects, it is a bad system. When you give power to the central banks to manipulate your hard-earned dollars, your hard-earned currency, be it fiat or not, they're manipulating it. It's just a few men doing that. And they have this ability to change it at their will. It's a bad system. Milton Friedman happens to be right in this case. I totally agree. And then we get into this. It's just a little interesting fact. Japan's prison system is being driven to budgetary crisis by demographics, a welfare shortfall, and a new pernicious breed of villain. The recidivist retiree and the silver-haired crooks, say academics, are desperate to be behind bars. The shoplifting offenses, around 35% of them are committed by people over 60. There's good reason, concludes a report, to suspect that the shoplifting crime wave in particular represents an attempt by those convicted to end up in prison, an institution that offers free food, accommodation, and healthcare. You have a crisis in Japan that is not being talked about. And this is just one very good example showing you that. aging population. They can't afford things. They're ending up in jail to literally get their 3 square meals a day, their accommodations, their healthcare. And then last but not least, something connected. LA Times, a viral video released in February showed the Boston Dynamics' new bipedal robot, Atlas, performing human-like tasks, opening doors, tromping about in the snow, lifting, stacking boxes. Tech geeks cheered and Silicon Valley investors salivated at the potential end to human manual labor. And what they say is that most occupations that pay less than $20 an hour are likely to be, in the words of the report, check this out, automated into obsolescence. This is the so-called fourth industrial revolution, having found its first victims, blue-collar workers and the poor. Jobs will be replaced by robots, and those who are left unemployed will not find replacement work. This is the future we have in store. If you found this video informative, please give me a thumbs up. I appreciate all of your support, whether that comes in the form of thumbs up, subscribers, comments down below, or if you're supporting me on Patreon through your donations, each and every one of you. I really do appreciate it. If you send me an email, I will get back to you. So if you want to communicate with me, I'm probably the most active YouTube channel out there in terms of comments. Nobody else I've seen comments to practically every single comment. You know, people out there, they have these YouTube channels and that's great. They're sharing information, but they barely get back to their subscribers. What's the point? What's the point of having a YouTube channel if you're not communicating? This is to build a community sharing information. We don't have to agree on everything. We can just talk. This is a discussion. But most YouTube channels, I would say more than 90% of them, barely get back to their subscribers. And that's really sad. All right. Last but not least, if you found the video informative, I know you will find my book, The Money GPS, even more informative. If you head over to Amazon, they have a look inside feature, which will allow you to flip through the pages of the book and see if you like it. Take care.